The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their floating seats, all staring at the giant screen that showed a dying star. Around that star, something ancient was waking up. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrians stood first. His tall, thin body moved with precise grace as he activated the display. The blue-skinned alien's large eyes reflected the data streaming across the screens. "The artifact has been silent for 12,000 years, he said in his calm, logical voice. Now it transmits a signal we cannot ignore. The screen showed a massive ship, easily the size of a small moon. It was clearly not built by any known species. The hull was covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change when looked at directly. This was a progenitor vessel, one of the mysterious builders who had vanished long before any current civilization had learned to leave their home worlds. General Thark of the Kran Empire slammed his armored fist on his seat's arm. The red-scaled warrior's forearms gestured angrily at the display. 12 expeditions have tried to reach that cursed ship. 12 expeditions never returned. The Maelstrom sector is a graveyard. High Counselor Valthara of the Ethereals floated forward, her energy form shimmering like heat waves. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. The temporal distortions alone would tear apart any vessel. Add the gravitational anomalies and radiation storms, and approach becomes suicide. The hegemony representative, a creature that looked like living metal, projected holographic calculations into the air. Complex equations and probability charts filled the space above the council floor. Survival probability 0.27%. Mission success probability 0.03%. Crew survival, impossible. Ambassador Kethvar nodded slowly. Yet the signal continues. The coordinates it transmits lead to a data cache somewhere within the derelict. Our scientists believe this cache contains the complete technological knowledge of the progenitors. A murmur went through the council chamber. Progenitor technology was legendary. They had built machines that could bend space and time. Their energy sources had powered entire galaxies. Most importantly, they had achieved something no current civilization could understand. They had simply vanished without a trace, leaving behind only empty worlds and abandoned artifacts. Unlimited energy generation, the Zephyrian continued. Faster than light communication across any distance. Transportation methods that make our current jump drives look primitive. The medical advances alone could extend the life of every being in the galaxy. The hegemony representative's metal form shifted color from silver to deep red. The data shows the star will collapse within 72 hours. The resulting black hole will consume the entire system. If the cache is to be retrieved, a crew must board the derelict, navigate its failing systems, extract the data, and escape before the star dies. While being torn apart by forces that have destroyed every ship that has tried, General Thark added grimly. High Counselor Valthara's form pulsed with soft light. I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. This mission is beyond the capability of any known technology or crew. The chamber fell silent. On the screen, the ancient progenitor ship continued its slow dance around the dying star. Pieces of its hull were already breaking away as gravitational forces pulled at its structure. Soon, it would be gone forever, taking its secrets with it. Ambassador. Kethvar looked around the chamber. Are we in agreement then? The mission parameters make success impossible. We cannot ask any crew to sacrifice themselves for such a small chance of success. One by one, the representatives of the major powers nodded. The Zephyrians calculated the odds and found them unacceptable. The hegemony's computers confirmed certain failure. The Kran Empire's warriors knew a hopeless battle when they saw one. The Ethereal's ancient wisdom warned against such folly. Then it is decided, Kethvar said. We will monitor the artifact until its destruction and attempt to learn what we can from long-range scans. Perhaps future technology will make such missions possible. As the representatives began to file out of the chamber, discussing the lost opportunity and the wisdom of their decision, a small section near the back remained occupied. The human delegation sat quietly in their simple seats, watching the data, streams with intense focus. Ambassador Sarah Chen was a small woman by human standards, but her presence commanded attention. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, evidence of years spent in difficult negotiations. Beside her sat Captain Marcus Rodriguez, his weathered face bearing the scars of numerous space battles. The rest of the human delegation included their best scientists, engineers, and military advisors. Chen stood slowly and activated her communication device. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. The human delegation requests permission to address the council. The exodus slowed, then stopped. Representatives turned back with expressions of curiosity and concern. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Council, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Their technology was primitive compared to the elder races. Their military was tiny. Their scientific achievements, while impressive for such a young species, were far behind the galactic standard. Ambassador Kethvar's large eyes blinked slowly. The floor recognizes the human delegation. Chen walked to the center of the chamber, her steps echoing in the sudden silence. She looked up at the massive display showing the doomed progenitor ship. "We have listened to your analysis. We have reviewed the data. We understand the risks." She paused, turning to face the assembled aliens. "Humanity accepts the mission." The reaction was immediate and intense. General Thark's forearms waved in agitation. "Impossible! Your species lacks the technology." The hegemony representatives. Metal form flashed warning colors. "Human vessels cannot survive the radiation levels. Your shields are insufficient." High Counselor Valthera floated closer, her energy form pulsing with concern. "Young species, you do not understand what you attempt. This is not bravery but foolishness." Chen remained calm, her hands clasped behind her back. "Perhaps, but someone has to try." Ambassador Kethvar stepped forward, his logical mind struggling to process the human decision. "You have heard our calculations. Success is mathematically impossible. Crew survival is 0%. Why would you accept certain death?" Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the assembled aliens uncomfortable. It was not the smile of someone who had given up hope. It was the smile of someone who had found something worth fighting for. "Because you said it was impossible," she replied simply. "And in our experience, impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet." Captain Rodriguez joined her in the center of the chamber. His voice was rough from years of commanding ships in dangerous situations. "We volunteer for this mission. My crew and I, we know the odds. We know what we're facing. But that progenitor ship has something the galaxy needs, and someone has to get it." The chamber erupted in debate. Some aliens tried to talk the humans out of their decision. Others offered technical assistance. A few simply stared in amazement at the species that would volunteer for certain death. Through it all, Chen and Rodriguez stood calmly, watching the display of the ancient ship. Time was running out. The star was dying. Soon, the opportunity would be lost forever, and humanity, as always, was ready to step into the impossible. The debate in the council chamber continued for another hour. Ambassador Kethvar tried every logical argument he could think of to change the human decision. The Zephyrian's computer-like mind processed thousands of scenarios, and in every single one, the human crew died. "Your species has been in space for only 50 years, he said, his blue skin taking on a darker shade that indicated deep concern. "The hegemony has explored the galaxy for 10,000 years. The ethereals have existed since before your son was born. If we cannot complete this mission, how can you?" Chen listened patiently to each argument. She had expected this reaction. Every alien species they had encountered seemed to think humans were reckless children, playing with forces they could not understand. Sometimes they were right, but sometimes being reckless was exactly what a situation needed. "You have better ships," she admitted. "Better weapons, better shields, better everything, really. But you have one thing we don't have." General Thark leaned forward, his red scales clicking against his armor. "What is that?" "The good sense to give up when the odds are impossible. The Cran General's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. That is, wisdom. Maybe, Chen said. But wisdom doesn't always get the job done. High Counselor Vale Thara's energy form pulsed with ancient knowledge. Child species, you speak of determination as if it were a tool. But determination cannot overcome the laws of physics. It cannot strengthen your hull against gravitational forces that will tear it apart. It cannot shield your crew from radiation that will kill them in minutes. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. His scarred hands gestured toward the display showing the progenitor ship. You're right. We don't have better technology. Our ship will probably break apart before we even reach the derelict. Our crew will probably die in the first radiation storm. But here's the thing about humans. We don't stop trying just because something is impossible. The hegemony representative's metal form shifted to a concerned yellow color. This is not logical. Why sacrifice lives for such a small chance of success? Because it's not zero, Rodriguez said simply. You calculated 0.27% survival probability. That's not zero. That's a chance. And humans are really good at making the most of small chances. Ambassador Kethvar activated his personal computer interface. Data streams flowed around his tall form as he accessed the human database. Your species has attempted many missions with low survival probability. The success rate is concerning. Define. Concerning, Chen said with that unsettling smile. 47% of your most dangerous missions have resulted in complete crew loss. This is unacceptable by any civilized standard. And the other 53%? Kethvar paused, processing the implications. Were successful. That's why we're going, Rodriguez said. Because somebody has to be in that 53% and it might as well be us. The chamber fell quiet as the aliens tried to understand the human logic. To most species, a 47% failure rate would mean those missions should never be attempted. To humans, it meant they succeeded more often than they failed. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined them from the human delegation. The xenoarchaeologist was small even by human standards, but her dark eyes burned with intelligence and determination. I've studied progenitor artifacts for 20 years. This is the discovery of a lifetime, maybe the discovery of any lifetime. That data cache could contain the answers to questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. Commander James Morrison, the military tactics expert, came forward next. The big man's presence seemed to fill the space around him. I've led troops into hopeless battles before. Sometimes hopeless battles are the only ones worth fighting. Engineer Liu Wei approached with quick, nervous steps. His hands were already moving as if adjusting invisible controls. The technical challenges are incredible. Interfacing human technology with progenitor systems that we don't understand. Making repairs in an environment that wants to kill us. It's the kind of problem that should be impossible to solve. He grinned suddenly. I love impossible problems. Navigator Zara al-Rashid walked up with confident strides. She had guided ships through some of the most dangerous regions of space. I've plotted courses through asteroid fields, ion storms, and collapsing spacetime. The Maelstrom sector is definitely the worst thing I've ever seen. But I've seen worse odds before. When? General Thark demanded. Never, she admitted. But there's always a first time. The alien representatives exchanged worried glances. The humans were not being reckless or stupid. They understood the dangers perfectly well. They simply chose to face them anyway. Ambassador Kethvar made one last attempt at logic. Even if you reach the derelict, even if you survive the radiation and the gravitational stress, the ship itself is a maze of unknown technology. You could spend days trying to find the data cache. You have hours at most. Dr. Vasquez smiled. Then we'd better work fast. The progenitor systems will be completely alien to you. Your technology may not even be compatible. Engineer Liu shrugged. I'll figure something out. I always do. The route to the derelict goes through spatial anomalies that could tear your ship apart. Navigator al-Rashid checked her wrist computer. Better get started then. High Counselor Vale Thara's form pulsed with what might have been frustration. You speak as if willpower alone will overcome these obstacles. Captain Rodriguez looked up at the ancient being's energy form. Counselor, with respect, willpower is about all humans have ever had. We don't have the strongest bodies or the smartest minds or the best technology. What we have is the absolute refusal to quit when things get tough. And things are definitely about to get tough. The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Kethvar spoke. If you are determined to attempt this mission, we will provide what assistance we can. Detailed scans of the derelict, updated readings on the spatial anomalies, emergency supplies. We appreciate that, Chen said. General Thark stood slowly. The Kran Empire will provide you with our best armor plating modifications. It will not be enough, but it may give you a few extra minutes. The hegemony representative's color shifted to respectful blue. Our computers will calculate the optimal approach vector. The route will still be deadly, but perhaps slightly less. So, High Counselor Veilthera floated closer. And I will share what little we know of progenitor technology. It is not much, but it may help you understand what you find. Chen bowed slightly to each of them. Thank you, all of you. We know you think we're making a mistake. We do, Kethvar said honestly. But we have learned that humans sometimes succeed, where logic says they should fail. Perhaps this will be one of those times. As the council session ended, the aliens began making preparations for what they privately assumed would be a memorial service. The humans, meanwhile, headed for their ship, with the kind of calm confidence that came from facing impossible odds and deciding to beat them anyway. The Defiant was not the most advanced ship in the galaxy. It was not the fastest, or the strongest, or the most heavily armed, but it was crewed by humans, and sometimes that was enough. Soon they would find out if this was one of those times. The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Maelstrom sector, and immediately every alarm on the ship started screaming. Captain Rodriguez gripped his command chair as the ship shook violently. Through the view screen, he could see why 12 expeditions had never returned. Space itself looked wrong here. Stars twisted into impossible spirals, light bent in directions that hurt to look at, and in the center of it all a massive red giant star pulsed with the irregular rhythm of something dying. Radiation levels are off the charts, reported Dr. Vasquez from the science station. The background radiation alone should have killed us by now. Should have, but didn't, Rodriguez said calmly. Liu, how are our shields holding? Engineer Liu's hands flew over his controls, rerouting power through systems that were never designed to work together. Shields are at 30% and dropping. The good news is I figured out how to boost them by linking our life support power grid to the deflector array. And the bad news? If the shields fail, we'll suffocate before the radiation kills. As Navigator Al-Rashid looked up from her station, sweat beading on her forehead. Captain, the gravitational readings don't make sense. It's like space is folded in on itself. My instruments say there are 17 different ways to approach the derelict, and all of them lead through areas that should crush us into atoms. Should, Rodriguez repeated. There's that word again. Morrison, what's our tactical situation? Commander Morrison's scarred face was grim as he studied the sensor readings. Whatever destroyed those 12 expeditions is still out there. I'm reading debris fields that match Zephyrian hull composition, Kran battle armor fragments, even pieces of hegemony ships. But the weird thing is, none of the debris shows weapon damage. Then what killed them? The sector itself, the gravitational. Stress tore their ships apart. The radiation cooked their crews. The temporal distortions scattered them across time. Morrison looked up from his console. Captain, this place doesn't just kill you. It kills you in ways that shouldn't be possible. Rodriguez nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Galactic Council had given them every piece of data about the Maelstrom sector, and all of it pointed to certain death. But humans had faced certain death before and found ways to make it uncertain. All right, people. We knew this wasn't going to be easy. Liu, I need those shields to hold for another 6 hours. I don't care how you do it. 6 hours? Liu's voice cracked slightly. Captain, with respect, these shields won't last 6 minutes in this environment. Then don't let them fail for 6 minutes. After that, figure out how to make them not fail for another 6 minutes. Keep doing that until we reach the derelict. It was the kind of order that made no logical sense. It was also exactly the kind of order that humans had been following for thousands of years. Don't think about the impossible task ahead. Just focus on the next small step. Al-Rashid, plot us a course to that ship. I don't care if the route is impossible. Find one anyway. The navigator's fingers moved over her controls with desperate precision. Captain, the safest route takes us through 3 different spatial anomalies, 2 gravitational wells, and something my computer insists is a temporal loop. Define safest. 97% chance of death instead of 99%. I'll take those odds, Morrison. Keep an eye on our hull integrity. When it starts to fail, let me know. When, not if. Commander, everything in this sector wants to kill us. Our hull is definitely going to start failing. The question is whether we can keep it together long enough to complete the mission. The Defiant began its approach to the progenitor derelict, and immediately the laws of physics started trying to tear them apart. The ship's hull groaned under gravitational stress that should have crushed it instantly. Radiation levels spiked beyond anything the shields were designed to handle, and, through it all, space itself seemed to twist around them like a living thing. Shields at 10%, Lou called out, his voice tight with concentration. I'm rerouting power from weapons, life support, and artificial gravity. We're basically flying a very expensive coffin at this point. But we're still flying, Rodriguez pointed out. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments with excitement that seemed completely inappropriate for their situation. Captain, I'm getting readings from the derelict. The hull is definitely progenitor. Construction, but there's something else. The ship is responding to our approach. Responding how? It's singing. Through the static and interference of the radiation storms, a sound reached them. It was not quite music and not quite language, but it seemed to resonate in their bones. The alien song was beautiful and terrifying and utterly inhuman. That's new, Morrison said grimly. The previous expeditions never reported any kind of signal from the derelict. Maybe they never got close enough, Al-Rashid suggested. She was fighting her controls as space-time tried to fold their ship into impossible shapes. Or maybe the ship only sings when it's about to die. The progenitor vessel filled their view screen now, and it was even more massive than the long-range scans had suggested. The hull was covered in symbols that seemed to move when not looked at directly. Parts of the ship flickered in and out of existence as temporal distortions played havoc with reality. Hull integrity at 60% and falling, Morrison reported. We're losing atmosphere on decks 3 and 7. Seal those sections, Rodriguez ordered. How long until we can dock? Assuming we can find a docking port that still exists in this timeline, maybe 20 minutes, Al-Rashid said. Shields are gone, Lou announced with remarkable calm. We're now relying on our hull plating to protect us from radiation that could cook a planet. Dr. Vasquez was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. Captain, the energy readings from that ship are incredible. Whatever power source the progenitors used, it's still active after 12,000 years. And the technology signatures, I've never seen anything like them. The song from the derelict was getting louder, and now it seemed to be coming from inside their own ship. The walls hummed with alien harmonies that made their teeth ache. There, Al-Rashid called out. I've found a docking port. It's on the side of the ship that technically doesn't exist right now, but the temporal distortion should cycle back in about 3 minutes. You want us to dock with something that doesn't exist? Morrison asked. Only temporarily doesn't exist, Al-Rashid corrected. It's completely different. Rodriguez almost smiled. This was the kind of conversation that could only happen on a human ship. Any other species would have calculated the impossibility of docking with a non-existent port and turned back. Humans just figured out when the port would exist again and planned accordingly. Do it, he ordered. Hull integrity at 40%, Morrison reported. We're basically held together by willpower and prayer at this point. Good thing humans are excellent at both, Rodriguez said. The Defiant approached the flickering docking port as pieces of its own hull began to peel away under the gravitational stress. The progenitor ship loomed above them like a metal mountain, its alien song growing louder with each passing second. "Docking port is there," Al-Rashid announced as reality reasserted itself around the ancient airlock. "I'm bringing us in." The ship shuddered as the docking clamps engaged with technology that predated galactic civilization. For a moment, Rodriguez wondered if their systems would even be compatible with progenitor engineering. Then the airlock, sealed with a sound like distant thunder, and the alien song suddenly stopped. "We're docked," Al-Rashid said unnecessarily. "Hull integrity at 30% and holding," Morrison added. Somehow. Liu looked up from his controls with the kind of grin that meant he had done something impossible. "Life support is stable. Artificial gravity is working, and I have no idea how any of our systems are still functioning." Dr. Vasquez was already suiting up for the expedition into the derelict. "The data cache is somewhere in the central core of the ship. According to the signal, we need to go through about 12 levels of progenitor technology that we don't understand." Rodriguez stood up from his command chair and checked his own equipment. "Then we'd better get started. We have maybe 4 hours before this whole system gets swallowed by a black hole." As the crew prepared to enter the ancient alien ship, none of them mentioned the obvious fact that their own vessel was falling apart around them. They would need the Defiant to escape the collapsing star system, and it was becoming increasingly clear that the ship might not survive long enough to get them home. But that was a problem for later. Right now, they had a progenitor data cache to find, and humans were very good at solving one impossible problem at a time. The airlock opened onto a corridor that defied every law of architecture Rodriguez had ever learned. The walls curved in directions that seemed to go both up and down at the same time. Lights that weren't quite lights illuminated surfaces that weren't quite surfaces. And through it all, a faint humming sound suggested that despite being 12,000 years old, the ship was still very much alive. "Atmosphere is breathable," Dr. Vasquez reported, checking her scanner. "Gravity is about 0.8 standard. Temperature is perfect for human comfort. It's like the ship is welcoming us, or preparing us for something," Commander Morrison muttered, his weapon ready despite the fact that they had encountered no signs of life. Engineer Liu ran his hands along the walls, marveling at the construction. "This metal isn't in any database. I know it feels warm, like it's alive. And these energy conduits, and they're carrying power in patterns that shouldn't be possible." Navigator Al-Rashid consulted her portable scanner. "The signal from the data cache is coming from deeper in the ship, but the layout doesn't match any architectural style I've seen. It's like the ship was designed by beings who thought in dimensions we can't understand." Captain Rodriguez led the team forward, following the winding corridor as it branched into passages that seemed to lead everywhere and nowhere. The progenitor ship was a maze, designed by aliens whose minds worked in ways no current species could comprehend. "Stay together," he ordered. "Liu, can you interface with any of these control systems?" The engineer stopped at what looked like a control panel, though it was hard to tell where the panel ended and the wall began. When he touched the surface, symbols appeared in the air above it. They were beautiful and complex and completely meaningless. "I have no idea what any of this does," he admitted. "But somehow I think I can figure it out. It's like the ship wants to be understood." Dr. Vasquez was examining the symbols with growing excitement. "These aren't just controls. They're a language, a way of thinking about reality that's completely different from ours. And look at this." She touched another section of the wall and more symbols appeared. "The ship is teaching us how to read it." As they moved deeper into the vessel, the symbols became more complex, but also more familiar. It was as if the progenitor technology was adapting to their minds, translating itself into concepts they could understand. "This is impossible," Morrison said, as he watched Liu successfully activate what appeared to be a door control. "He shouldn't be able to operate alien technology. But he is," Rodriguez pointed out, "and that's what matters." They entered a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. The data signal was stronger here, but it was coming from dozens of different sources. The entire chamber was one massive information storage system. "It's beautiful," Al-Rashid whispered. The crystals hummed in harmony, creating music that was somehow both alien and familiar. Dr. Vasquez approached the nearest crystal formation, with her scanner active. The data density is incredible. Each of these crystals contains more information than our entire galactic database, and there are thousands of them. Liu found what looked like an interface terminal, though it was unlike anything in their technology. When he touched it, the crystals responded, their light growing brighter. "I'm getting something," he said excitedly. "It's not language exactly, more like pure information. And it's trying to tell us something." The chamber filled with images that appeared directly in their minds. They saw the progenitors as they had been millions of years ago, beings of incredible intelligence and power who had built technologies that could reshape reality itself. But they also saw something else. "They're not extinct," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "They evolved beyond physical form. They became something we can't even understand." The images continued, showing the progenitors' final project. They had left behind tests scattered throughout the galaxy, challenges designed to identify species worthy of inheriting their knowledge. Most civilizations that found these tests recognized them for what they were and turned away, knowing they could not pass. The other alien expeditions, Morrison realized, they found these chambers and left. They were smart enough to know they couldn't complete the test. "But we're not smart enough to know that," Rodriguez said with a slight smile. More images flooded their minds. The progenitors had been waiting for a species with a very specific characteristic. Not intelligence, though that was important. Not technology, though that helped. They had been waiting for a species that would attempt the impossible simply because it needed to be attempted. "They've been watching us," Al-Rashid said in wonder. "All the times humans have tried impossible missions, all the times we've succeeded against impossible odds. They've been waiting for a species like us." The crystals began to resonate more strongly, and suddenly Liu's hands were moving over the interface controls with impossible skill. "I understand now," he said. "The ship isn't just giving us the data. It's giving us the ability to understand." Information flowed into their minds faster than they could process. Technologies for manipulating space and time. Energy sources that could power entire galaxies. Medical advances that could extend life indefinitely. Transportation methods that made faster-than-light travel look like walking. But with the knowledge came understanding. The progenitors had not simply vanished. They had transcended physical existence because they had learned everything there was to learn about the universe. The only thing they had never experienced was the struggle to achieve the impossible against overwhelming odds. "That's why they created the tests," Dr. Vasquez said, tears streaming down her face as the implications hit her. They wanted to find a species that could show them what they had lost when they became perfect. "The human factor," Morrison added quietly. "The ability to succeed through pure stubborn determination when logic says you should fail." The chamber began to change around them. The crystals were dissolving into pure energy, transferring their contents into storage devices that had materialized from the ship's walls. The progenitor technology was packaging itself for transport. "We need to go," Rodriguez said, checking his chronometer. "The star will collapse in less than 2 hours." As they gathered the data storage devices, the ship began to sing again. But now the song was different. It was a song of farewell and gratitude and something that might have been joy. They made their way back through the corridors, but the maze was no longer confusing. The ship guided them along the most direct route to their docking port, eager to help them escape before its own destruction. "Captain," Al-Rashid called out as they reached the airlock. "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. The star isn't just collapsing, it's collapsing faster than it should be." "How long do we have?" Rodriguez asked as they sealed the airlock behind them. "Maybe 30 minutes before the black hole forms. After that, nothing escapes." Liu was already at the engineering station, frantically working to restore their damaged systems. "The ship is held together with hope and spare parts at this point. I don't know if we can generate enough power to escape the gravitational field." Morrison checked their tactical situation. "Hull integrity is at 15%. One good hit from a radiation storm and will come apart like wet paper." Dr. Vasquez secured the progenitor data devices in the ship's vault. Whatever happens, this information has to survive. It could change everything for every species in the galaxy. Rodriguez took his command chair and looked at his crew. They were exhausted, frightened, and facing almost certain death. They were also completely determined to succeed. All right, people. We came here to do the impossible and we did it. Now we just have to do one more impossible thing. Just one? Al-Rashid asked with a tired smile. Just one. We have to get home alive. As the Defiant began its desperate escape from the collapsing star system, the progenitor derelict fell toward the dying star. Its long vigil was over. After 12,000 years of waiting, it had finally found what it was looking for, a species crazy enough to attempt the impossible and human enough to succeed. The Defiant's escape from the collapsing star system was a masterpiece of human stubbornness, defeating the laws of physics. With hull integrity at 15% and dropping, Engineer Liu performed repairs that violated every principle of space engineering. He rerouted power through systems that were never meant to carry it, held damaged hull plates together with emergency patches that shouldn't have worked, and somehow coaxed their failing engines into producing just enough thrust to fight the growing gravitational pull. This is impossible, he muttered as he worked, sweat dripping onto his jury-rigged controls. These repairs shouldn't hold. This power routing should have exploded by now. None of this should be working. But it is working, Captain Rodriguez pointed out from the bridge, where he was manually piloting the ship through gravitational fields that were tearing space itself apart. Navigator Al-Rashid had given up trying to plot a conventional escape course. Instead, she was threading them through collapsing space-time using intuition and desperate mathematics. Captain, there's a temporal rift opening up ahead. If I can time this right, we might be able to ride the gravitational wave out of the system. Might? Commander Morrison asked while frantically transferring power from weapons to structural integrity. Probably not, but it's better than definitely not. Dr. Vasquez, clutching the precious progenitor data storage devices, watched through the view screen as the star began its final collapse. Behind them, space was folding in on itself as the black hole formed. Ahead of them was a ribbon of twisted space-time that looked like it could tear their ship apart just by existing. Everyone hold on, Rodriguez announced. This is going to get rough. The Defiant plunged into the temporal rift just as the star collapsed completely. Reality bent around them in ways that made their instruments scream warnings. The ship groaned and shook as forces that had no name tried to pull it apart, and somehow, impossibly, they emerged on the other side. All stop, Rodriguez ordered as they reached normal space. Damage report. Liu looked up from his controls with an expression of complete bewilderment. Captain, by every law of engineering I know, this ship should be a cloud of expanding plasma right now. Instead, we're somehow intact and functional. Define functional, Morrison said dryly. We have life support, basic propulsion, and structural integrity that's held together mostly by stubbornness and prayer. But we're alive. Al-Rashid was already plotting a course back to Galactic Council space. We'll need to travel at low speed to avoid stressing the hull, but we can make it home in about a week. Dr. Vasquez activated the communications array. I'm sending a priority message to the Council. They need to know we succeeded. The response from the Galactic Council came faster than expected. Ambassador Kethavar's image appeared on their screen, his blue features showing what might have been shock. Captain Rodriguez, this is unexpected. Our long-range sensors detected the star's collapse. We assumed that we were dead? Rodriguez finished. We get that a lot. You actually retrieved the progenitor data cache? Dr. Vasquez held up one of the storage devices. We retrieved all of it, Ambassador. Complete technological database of the progenitor civilization. Energy generation, faster-than-light communication, medical advances, transportation systems, everything. There was a long pause as the implications sank in. Then Kethavar's logical mind began processing the data. This will change everything. Every aspect of galactic civilization will be transformed by this knowledge. That was the idea, Rodriguez said simply. When the Defiant finally limped into Council space a week later, they found a reception unlike anything in galactic history. Ships from every major civilization had gathered to escort them home. The ID, normally reserved aliens, were actually cheering over the communication channels. The council chamber was packed when Captain Rodriguez and his crew arrived to present their findings. Representatives who had written them off as dead were now looking at them with something approaching awe. Ambassador Chen took the floor first, her diplomatic training helping her maintain composure despite her obvious pride in the human crew. The mission parameters were clear. Retrieve the progenitor data cache before the star collapsed. Mission accomplished. But it was Dr. Vasquez who delivered the real surprise. As she activated the progenitor storage devices, the chamber filled with holographic displays showing technologies beyond imagination. The progenitors didn't just leave us their technology, she explained. They left us a message. They evolved beyond physical existence millions of years ago, but they never forgot what it was like to struggle against impossible odds. They created these tests to find a species that still remembered that lesson. High Counselor Vale Thara's energy form pulsed with ancient wisdom. You are saying they were searching for what exactly? Hope, Dr. Vasquez said simply. They were looking for a species that would attempt the impossible, not because they were sure they could succeed, but because success was necessary. General Thark leaned forward, his forearms gesturing in confusion. But this is illogical. Why? Value struggle over achievement? Engineer Liu spoke up from where he stood with the rest of the crew. Because achievement without struggle is just existence. Anyone can succeed when success is guaranteed. It takes something special to succeed when failure is almost certain. Ambassador Kethvar processed this with his computer-like mind. You are suggesting that what we consider logical behavior, avoiding missions with low success probability, is actually a limitation? Sometimes, Captain Rodriguez said. Sometimes the most logical thing to do is something completely illogical. The hegemony representative's metal form shifted to thoughtful silver. Our calculations showed the mission was impossible, yet you succeeded. This suggests our calculations were incomplete. Your calculations were perfect, Al-Rashid said. We had a 0.27% chance of success, but somebody has to be in that 0.27%, and humans have gotten really good at being the exception to the rule. Commander Morrison stepped forward, his scarred face serious. The progenitors watched our species for centuries. They saw humans attempt impossible rescues, impossible explorations, impossible battles. They saw us fail more often than we succeeded, but they also saw us never stop trying. The chamber was silent as the aliens absorbed this information. For most species, logical analysis led to logical decisions. Humans, apparently, used logical analysis to figure out how to make illogical decisions work. High Counselor Vale Thara spoke first. In my 3,000 years of existence, I have seen many civilizations rise and fall. Most follow predictable patterns. They expand until expansion becomes difficult. Then they consolidate and stagnate. But humans keep expanding even when it's impossible, Rodriguez finished. Yes, and perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. The formal ceremony that followed was unlike anything in Council history. For the first time, a junior species was offered leadership roles in galactic exploration, research, and defense. Not because their technology was superior, but because their approach to impossible problems had proven uniquely effective. Months later, as human-led expeditions began exploring regions of space that other species had deemed too dangerous, a young Zephyrian cadet approached Captain Rodriguez at a joint training facility. Captain, the cadet said in careful standard, I have studied your mission reports. The success rate for human expeditions is statistically improbable. How do you accomplish what logic says is impossible? Rodriguez looked at the young alien, remembering his own early days when everything seemed impossible. Want to know the secret? The cadet nodded eagerly. We don't know how to quit. When every logical analysis says we should give up, when every probability calculation shows certain failure, when every expert tells us the mission is impossible, we just keep going anyway. Rodriguez smiled. And sometimes that's the only qualification you need. The cadet made careful notes, trying to understand how such an approach could be taught or learned. What he didn't realize was that it couldn't be taught. It could only be chosen, one impossible mission at a time. As Rodriguez watched the young alien struggle with the concept, he remembered something Dr. Vasquez had discovered in the progenitor data. The ancient beings had left one final message, hidden deep in their technological database. It was a simple phrase in 1,000 different languages. "Thank you for reminding us what we used to be." The galaxy was full of species that had learned to be logical, efficient, and safe. But sometimes, the universe needed someone willing to be completely, irrationally, impossibly human. And thanks to one impossible mission, it always would.